The Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Live in the Bank Plus studio, we have a national championship coach, and he is Brian McMahon, Coach Mac. He goes by Mac, and we welcome, he's a head soccer coach at Belhaven, coming off the national championship last year, and his current team is ranked third in the country. Welcome in. How you doing?
I'm excited to be here. It's great. Great to be back.
Well, I'm glad that we got to line this up schedule-wise. You have a game tonight and a big game. But I want to start with your team, your program, winning the national championship last year. Could you describe to our audience how difficult it is to win 6 games, to keep 18 to 25, 26-year-olds focused on the task at hand, how difficult it was to go to Montgomery and win 6 games to win the national championship?
Well, it's extremely difficult. But if we trace back to last season, we actually started the season well. We were 13-0, and then we tripped up. We had a few losses towards the end of the season, and we really were we weren't playing our best, to be honest, towards the end of the season. You know, you watch March Madness and you see those teams sitting around a room who get the at-large bid, and then you see them cheering and excited. That was literally us. We sat around our theater on Belhaven's campus, and we literally waited to see if we could get one of those at-large bids. And fortunately, our body of work enabled us to get that at-large, and so then we had about a week and a half of preparing, and we knew at that point that we had been given a second chance. And so I think every one of the guys in the program came together. We set some standards of how we wanted to train, how we wanted to move forward, and whether we won or lost, we wanted to make the most of the opportunity. And I think, to be honest with you, the guys really came together, and you know, we kind of caught fire again, and you get one win under your belt, you build some confidence, and you move forward.
Brian McMahon joining us in studio. Belhaven Soccer won the national championship last year. You're listening Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. How important, we talk about culture all the time, right? Culture in business, culture in your home, culture in your program. How important is it to develop the right culture, the right balance on developing kids, on, hey, this is going to be extremely competitive and difficult environment, and we want everybody to get the best possible scenario, experience out of whatever they're doing.
Right. I'd say whether you're coaching soccer or any sport, I think consistency is a key from a coaching standpoint, and I think building trust and relationship of your players. I had a player yesterday come to me who, we have a first and a reserve team, or varsity and JV equivalent, and one of the guys came to me and said, he didn't make the first team this year. And he said, you know what, I was very, I was upset. I was angry. I didn't make the first team. And he's a really good player, to be honest. But he said, the thing I appreciate about you is the consistency of what you look for from the players and the culture in which you create. And that is ultimately putting a lot of trust in your players. But, for me, one of the things we talk about a lot in the team is how sport relates to life. Whether you're a soccer coach, football, it doesn't matter. There's a lot you learn, especially in collegiate athletics. So, going through adversity, dealing with how you carry yourself in a win, how you carry yourself in a loss, day in, day out of training. And, it can be very much like a job, and so we try to tie in being a collegiate athlete to, maybe working a job someday that's a challenge, or maybe going through a struggle in a relationship with with a loved one or in a marriage. There's going to be some ups and downs, but if you can stay consistent in your approach, if you can resolve conflict, if you continue to grow and provide the leadership from myself as a coach and our coaching staff, but, ultimately I think communication is a key, and consistency.
Won the national championship last year. They're currently number 3 in the country. Belhaven soccer coach Brian McMahon in the studio. And Mac, you shared with me a couple of weeks ago how you recruit, right? How you identify. This is fascinating because we're in the SEC. How bananas we are and totally over the top as far as recruiting, and we try to make sense of this 3 and 4 and 5-star system. Right. One of the first things that you started to discuss with me when I came to watch your guys practice was the inexact science of recruiting. Well, majority of your recruiting is done overseas.
Correct.
Give us an idea of how you recruit, how you identify the right player, and what a challenge it is considering so many of your players are international players.
Right. You know, the game of soccer is certainly global. On our roster, I think we have 19 different nationalities, and of course a lot of Americans as well. And recruiting is a challenge. I mean, you look at whatever sport, and some players are very talented, but when it comes to that internal motivation, they just may struggle. And I think freshmen or first-year players, whether they're transfers, always go through a transitional process, which will be a challenge. And you know, for me, I do recruit global. We have a lot of players, and I work with a lot of, you know, let's call them agents. In other words, companies who work with international players.
I thought this was fascinating.
So we work with international agents, and so literally whether myself, so last year I've gone to England, I went to Chile, I went to Brazil. So I'm flying literally around the world, and they have showcases. And in these showcases, you know, it's basically a few days of training from start to finish. And so you watch maybe 150 kids when I was in Brazil, and literally you sit there and you evaluate them and you try to get an idea for them. But for me, every coach will look at that differently.
Sure.
So some coaches will just look for the diamond prize, you know, the type of player who's just the fastest or just does this and that. But to be honest with you, I watch players more away from the action than I do part of it, because I want to see a kid's character. I want to see how he interacts with his team. I want to see the relationship that he has maybe with me, interacting with me. There's a lot to be said about, you know, the adjustment. So it's not just always the most talented players. It's, you know, it's like the line from Miracle. You know, we're not looking for the best players. We're looking for the right ones. And for me, that is definitely a motto that I try to do when looking at international players.
How important is player development in your program?
Extremely important. And one of the things that my guys would tell you is, and it can make for a challenge, is I put a lot of trust in the guys. And so I play quite a few guys. And you know, I know all my team would say, Coach, I want to play more. I want more. But I think the key is when you go through training sessions or practices, if you will, if the guys always know they're going to play, no matter how they practice, then you're not going to get the most out of them. And so in our case, you know, I give every player an opportunity to contribute. And some guys, literally, that may be a frustrating 10 minutes, but in that 10 minutes, they at least know they're going to get in the game and they have an opportunity to do well. And for us, we're kind of a team, if you look at our results, we really wear teams down. You know, you were talking a little bit about the Mississippi State LSU, and you said the emotion is going to wear off for Mississippi State. I think you framed that right. I think LSU, you know, eventually maybe the more talent or that will come out. I think any sport is the same way. I think if you stay consistent and you know, you play guys that you know are going to give the best over time, you know, that'll give you a result.
Yeah, Brian McMahon, head soccer coach, Belhaven, won the national championship last year, currently number 3 in the country, talking culture, recruiting, player development, and just winning and competing. Will you discuss what you did last year when you guys went on the 6-game run to win the national championship, and how many players you played compared to the final team that you played, and the reason, your strategy and philosophy behind what you just described?
Sure. Well, to win a national championship in any sport is extremely difficult, but in soccer specifically, once we got that at-large bid, you know, it comes out. So it's literally like a March Madness bracket, and then on our bracket we're some of the best teams in the country in terms of rankings, some of the traditional powerhouses. So going through that run, one of the things that I did that just worked off is we actually lost one of our starting forwards, and a guy who had scored, I think, maybe 19 goals last year. He blew out his hamstring. And so all of a sudden, you know, the guys are like, you know, who's going to step up? And I think, to be honest with you, the guys all took initiative and everyone stepped up a little bit more. In fact, I don't know if we win the championship with him, to be honest, because I think the team took ownership of, we can't just rely on necessarily one guy, you know, to score for us. So, but as we made that run, and it's very difficult. You have to win, you know, 5 games in like 6 days. You make that, it's really challenging. There's only 1 day off in between. So as we made that run, we played, on average, we played about 23 players a game. And in soccer, you start 11. And so whereas a lot of the teams that we played, they would only go a couple players deep into their bench. So having that sense of doing what we had done all year, the sense of confidence with the guys, playing a lot of guys, giving them all an opportunity, having them have game experience, when it came down to it, we were watching other teams be more fatigued. And whereas we were getting more excited and we were more fresh, they were more fatigued. And so, a quick story, we played a team called Lindsey Wilson, who is traditionally the powerhouse. In fact, they're the number one team in the country right now. We tied them earlier this season. But last season, we faced them in the Final Four. And, player for player, they are far more athletic. They're faster. They're just an impressive team. They've won 9 national championships, and Belhaven had won 1, and that was the 1992 class, which was a special group. So I told the guys we had a special movie to watch. We sat around a hotel, and so I brought out the movie. We watched the 1934 cartoon of Tortoise and the Hare. And so the guys all
like it.
The guys are saying, Coach, this is, what's going on. But by the end of the cartoon, as you know, the story, the tortoise beats the hare because the hare becomes distracted. And point being, and I kind of went on to a speech after that in the hotel, was be consistent with who we are. Don't try to play someone else's game. Play our style of play. And in the end, we beat them in the last minute of the game by a goal. And so it came to fruition, just that concept of being true to who we are, not trying to replicate what someone else does.
We're visiting with Brian McMahon, head soccer coach at Belhaven, and great stuff. The NAIA division is a lot like the SEC in soccer. Would you discuss that?
Sure.
That was one of the first things that you told me. The powerhouse teams, Mac, and the depth in NAIA, and the fact that you guys are allowed to go get international players and work with a third party, go between agent, benefits you guys over the Texas USC's, Penn States of the world.
Correct. A lot of people don't know a lot about NAI, and if you compare some NAI sports, it may not be to the level of like an NCAA Division I. So most of your audience would primarily know that, but not know much about the NAI. In men's soccer specifically, the NAI has, in soccer Division I, there's 12 full rides. In NAI, you're allowed 12 full rides as well. So the funding is exactly the same for both. And then there's the NAI clearinghouse and the NCAA clearinghouse. And the NAI clearinghouse is a little bit more flexible with players. So, we have a captain on our team who's 27 years old. And the average age of our player is 23, 24 years old. So there's a lot of opportunity for guys who are very experienced. They're a lot more veteran. And really, to be honest with you, and you look at this, and people may not believe it, but if you look at the top NAI teams year in, year out, they beat the best Division I teams. So the team I told you about, Lindsey Wilson, they went on to play the Division I national championship team last year, and that was Indiana University. And Lindsey Wilson beat them 3-1 at IU. So the NAI is literally the best division in all of sport for men's soccer. Again, I don't want to speak for every sport.
Sure.
But just in men's soccer specifically, I love the NAI because it is literally coaching the best players in the country.
That was one of the first questions I asked you.
Yeah.
You remember, I said, well, your resume is impressive. When will you jump to Georgia or UNC Chapel Hill? And then you explained the whole deal to me, and I said, wow, that's incredible, the piece on the NAIA and the international player. I want to talk about the goalkeeper. I don't know, obviously, I don't know a lot about soccer.
Sure.
That's an understatement. So will you give me an idea of the mental makeup that it takes to play at the level? Because we always talk about the quarterback and the point guard and the starting pitcher on Friday night in SEC baseball on this show, and how much pressure, how much they're asked to do, not just physically but mentally.
Right.
Can you discuss the goalkeeper position and what kind of mental makeup and guy it takes to perform at that level?
The challenge with goalkeepers is they literally could be called on just a few times through the course of the game, and they need to be the player that comes up with a big save. And one of the challenges with goalkeepers is whether or not they have presence. Mm-hmm. And the problem is you can't exactly define what presence means. You just know it when you see it. And you have keepers who just control the penalty box. They organize the defense well. They communicate well. Their reaction time is instinctual. And they're just special players. But really, to define a goalkeeper's presence is a very difficult thing to do. because they're not called on, consistently through the course of the game.
It's got to be a challenge. I mean,
absolutely.
Everything's on you for this 15 seconds, but then you may, like you said, you may not be in the game. You may not be a part of the game for 15 minutes.
Right. Our national championship last year, our goalkeeper Carl Blundell had 2 fantastic saves in the last 10 minutes of the game, and he wasn't really tested, to be honest, up until that point.
Nerve-wracking.
Absolutely. But, when you're called upon, you have to be ready, and that's a real challenge for goalkeepers.
Great stuff. I appreciate you coming in today.
Sure.
Super impressed with what you're doing at Belhaven. Congratulations on the success, although I know that you're not one to sit around, and I know you loved winning the national championship, but you're focused on this year, this team, and this season. And I bet that you were like, a defending national champion, I don't know about that, because each team is different and each year is different.
Right.
But you're in the top 5, number
Correct.
3 in the country.
Correct.
Congratulations. Love the stuff on culture and player development. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Bob.